Can you see that, Simon?
Yes, perfect. Thanks, Lynn.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our overview of the Grade R teaching module. So as you can see, this module says GRT101, which indicates that it's a first semester module. So if you enrolled in January, you are currently completing this module. You'll finish off in June or July after your exam. If you enrolled in July last year, then you will complete it from July until December or November. That will be your semester 1. So everybody who enrolled in January, this semester, you are going to submit your assignments and complete all of the assessments with regards to this module. So your module coordinator and lecturer for this module's name is Julia Ross. And if you have any queries regarding Grade R teaching, you'll email the DL support and then they'll put you into contact with Julia Ross. So I prescribed textbooks for the module. You've got 2 textbooks that you should have received from Wise Books already. It's the Handbook for Grade R Teaching by Davin, and then The Young Child in Context by DeWitt. Now, The Young Child in Context, you'll also use for some of your other modules. So just be sure in your study guide, you have a look exactly of the page numbers that are indicated. It will be certain pages for different lessons, not necessarily an entire chapter in the Young Child in Context textbook. You would have also received the study guide for GRT 101. Here, it will guide you through the content of the module and improve your understanding of different concepts. On ECI, you'll see there's an addendum added right at the top of the ECI page next to the online study guide on ECI. And you just need to download this, and it just indicates minor changes in the study guide. For example, page numbers, etc. So use that in conjunction with your study guide. Right, then again, in the front of the study guide, you'll find the study schedule. You're going to use this to manage your time throughout the semester. It will indicate to you the lessons, what the prescribed readings are. You can see, for example, for lesson 1, you're going to need to access the CAPS policy for English home language, for mathematics, and for life skills. And it indicates specific page numbers there. And in the Davin textbook, chapter 1, planning to teach. So you're going to use those, and in your study guide, it will indicate when you need to use the specific documents and what for. And then by the end of the lesson, or the time frame that you've spent on the module, you should have attained the following learning outcomes. So test yourself once you've completed the lesson to see if you understand all of those outcomes and whether you're able to do the things that it describes there. By this time, you should, bearing in mind that we have late registrations, you should be through lesson 1 and lesson 2 and making your way to lesson 3. All right, let's do an overview of the various lessons in GRT 101 and what concepts are covered here, what you should be able to do and understand. So lesson 1, planning to teach. You can see it shows you the CAPS document there. So you will have a look at a few pages in there and just become familiar with exactly what the expectations are in grade R, what the children need to be able to do. We don't expect you to learn the entire CAPS document for the exam. Again, we'll give you guidelines and specifications. Okay, then we'll look at the daily program. So we'll see how it's made up of 3 different types of activities in grade R. Your structured activities, what that entails. Your free play activities, what those are, and your routine activities. And while we're looking at what those activities are, we also have a look at what learning opportunities there are throughout the daily program, even in things like routine activities. So what we can teach the children when we do take them to the toilet, for example, the toilet routine. What are the valuable learning experiences there? Then we look at indoor and outdoor learning areas. So during the free play part of your daily program, you have these various learning areas. This is important to understand for your online task, which we'll get into just now. But we explore the various areas and what are the benefits of them here. And then finally, we finish off this lesson with teaching and learning through an integrated approach. So integration can mean a number of things. There can be an integration between subjects. So for example, I'm teaching a language lesson, but I integrate mathematics into my lesson. In the grade R context, we look at integrating a theme throughout the different subjects. So how do I run my theme on my body through my language lessons, through my mathematics lessons, and through my life skills lessons? Lesson 2, we look at the development of the grade R learner. So we define child development and we look at the various domains. If you have a look on screen, you can see we'll show you 5 different domains there. Physical, social, emotional, cognitive, which can also include language, or it can be presented as a completely separate domain, and then moral development. So when we include all these types of development, we speak about the holistic development of the child, the development of the child as a whole. Then we look at what influences the developing child. So you'll see in your study guide there is a diagram on Bronfenbrenner's model, which looks at all the different systems that impact learners' development. For example, in their immediate environment, their family, their friends, etc. And then more indirectly, things like community values or religious viewpoints. So make sure you have an understanding of that model. Then we move on to more practical activities you'll see in terms of perceptual development. So we look at your perceptual development forms part of your physical development domain. And we look there at what different types of activities we can do to improve a child's laterality, midline crossing, dominance. And then we finish off here with the inclusive educational approach. So differences in learning styles, if there are any developmental delays, and how do we deal with children that might be in that situation. What's quite important for your exam is to also be able to apply the skills practically. So, for example, it would be beneficial for you should definitely be able to define and explain each of these areas. But can you think of an example or an activity for how you can, for example, develop the social domain of a child? What could we do? The cognitive, the moral, the physical. And that's what you should always be trying to relay your content to, is the practical application of that content. So in the exam, if we ask you to give an activity, would you be able to do that? Lesson 3, learning and school readiness. So we want to see if you know what the difference is between school maturity and school readiness. For example, if we look at the child riding the bike, you as the teacher cannot do anything to make the child taller to ride the bike. We have to wait for him to grow, right? So that's part of his maturity. He's going to mature at his own pace. That's the biological growth of a child. However, I can help the child to acquire balance, to develop good core stability, visual and bilateral coordination. In other words, supporting the skills that he needs to ride the bike. And that is what school readiness entails. So we look at how we prepare their children for formal schooling in grade R when they go to grade 1. And we examine the criteria for school readiness. So how do we know when a child is school ready? And then we also look at the late developer. What are the causes of late development, and how do we deal with this in the classroom environment? In lesson 4, emergent literacy. So we define the concepts of language and speech development. We look at the factors that influence language development, and we'll unpack the whole language approach in depth here. And then finally, we examine listening and speaking delays. Lesson 5, emergent reading and phonic awareness. So we look at the emergent literacy program and how it promotes emergent reading and phonemic awareness. We look at developing sight vocabulary and letter recognition. We'll relate this to the CAPS home language document, and we'll examine different viewpoints regarding early reading instruction. Lesson 6, the beginnings of writing and spelling. So in grade R, the beginnings of writing and spelling, in fact, happen during art, during writing, during drawing, during painting. Those are the very beginning stages of writing and spelling. So here we look at art activities that promote emergent writing, the importance of visual arts, the criticism of workbooks, and then we relate all of this to the CAPS home language document once more. Lesson 7, the learner's world of mathematics. So here we explore the strategies we implement for mathematics. How do we do that in an integrated, playful way in grade R? In grade R, we want all our activities and experiences to be related to play. How do we create a mathematics-rich environment so that the children are able to experience mathematics through hands-on experiences? For example, if you look at the screen, you can see the children at the top taking part in water play activity. Now they're playing, they're enjoying it, they're working on different skills like perceptual activities, but they're also exploring mathematics concepts. For example, measurement. They are measuring volume there. They are seeing how many cups does it take to fill this container. They are learning what the vocabulary of full and empty and more and less means practically. Lesson 8, assessment in teaching and learning. So we want to look at what is the purpose of assessment, what is the difference between evaluation and assessment, the assessment process, and the principles for interpreting and reporting on assessment results. And then we'll finish off with lesson 9 on discipline. So here we look at the factors that influence behavior in grade R, the purpose and value of discipline, the different disciplinary styles. So that relates to parents as well as to teachers. And then finally, pro-social and antisocial behavior. In addition to your textbooks, your prescribed textbooks, you will find many learning materials on ECI. So these include your 3 CAPS documents, which is important to download, to either have them available on your device or to print them out. This gives you a real understanding of what level a grade R learner is at. So even when you go on your practicals, So you understand, is my lesson too difficult? Is my lesson too easy? And would this be appropriate to teach to a grade R at that time of year? The other thing you'll find is the referencing techniques guide. So you need to use this for your assignment as you'll be submitting through Turnitin. So you need to acknowledge the sources that you've used. If you've got information out of your textbook, you need to state there that this sentence comes out of the Davin textbook. The date is 2016 when it was published, and the page number is page 45, for example. Remember that your Turnitin percentage is 30%. So you only allowed 30% on Turnitin in terms of plagiarism. If it's above that, you need to redo your assignment or rework the parts that are highlighted and resubmit before the closing of the submission date. All right, your assessment guide. All of your assessment details are on ECI. So you'll see there that you have an online activity which counts 10% or contributes 10% towards your year mark. And the due date for this is the 13th of March. So you have 2 weeks to complete this assignment from today. Secondly, you have to complete a formal assignment. So this contributes 20% towards your year mark, and the due date for this is the 31st of March. Again, once you have completed your online activity and your assignment, you need to have achieved a duly performed mark, a DP, of 40% in order to gain access into the exam. Your examination will count 70% of your year mark, and the date of that will be communicated to you on ECI closer to the time, as well as the guidelines for what to study for the exam. You'll also find examples of past papers closer to the time posted under the examination section. It's very valuable for you to work through these so you can see the style of questioning that's relevant or applicable to a GRT exam. And then you'll need to achieve 50% in order to pass the module. You'll see there are online tests on the GRT ECI site as well. As you can see there, they are for revision purposes. So those will not count towards your year mark, but are very valuable to complete. All right, let's discuss your online activity and what is required of you. So all the information I'm giving you is available on the ECI page. First of all, you need to make sure you read up in your Davin textbook about all the different indoor and outdoor areas you find during your free play sessions. So you need to investigate all the different types of areas. Because you need to design an indoor classroom with at least 4 areas. So what you're going to do, if you look at the image above there, you're going to draw it from a bird's eye view from the top. Now you can either do that by actually taking an A3 piece of paper, physically drawing it out and labeling it and taking a photo of it because you're going to submit it online. Or you can design it on your computer. So if you have a design program, you can even do it on Word using different shapes. So whatever will suit you best. But what's very important there is that if there's a shelf, you need to label it shelf because it will obviously just look like a rectangle from above. You need to say chair, table, board. Now you can either label the equipment found in the area. For example, one of my areas, I want to make an art area, and so there I say shelves, I say an easel, a drying rack, for example. Or if space is an issue, you can mention the equipment in your write-up in the second section of your activity. So some examples of your indoor area, you could have a fantasy play area where you might set up like a hospital, for example, with a little bed and a stethoscope, or as a kitchen with an oven, and you'll normally have types of props that they can use and outfits that they can dress as, so they can really experience that area fully. You can have a fine motor area that works on the fine motor skills, or a reading corner, or a construction area where they use big blocks, Lego. Okay, now once you've done your design, it's well labeled so that we can see everything, you are going to have a write-up which discusses the value of the areas and the equipment you've included. So for example, my art area, so I could list my equipment there. I could say easel, drying rack, paintbrushes. And then I need to discuss how this area is valuable to developing the child. So what you need to keep in mind there is in the very beginning of this presentation, I discussed with you the various domains of development. Physical development, which includes fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and perceptual activities. Social, emotional, moral, cognitive, language. So for example, in my art area, I could say my children are going to use the paintbrushes to develop their fine motor skills because they're going to be painting a picture. And also this activity of using a large piece of paper gives them the opportunity to cross the midline with their paintbrushes, which is physical development. You could say, for example, they might be painting with a whole lot of people, so their social development will be developed because they need to discuss different things with their peers. They need to sort out different quarrels. They need to learn how to share. You could also include moral development there. So you're looking at the different domains of development and seeing which are developed in each of the areas. What makes that area and that equipment beneficial? On ECI, you will see a rubric for this activity. So 10 marks are allocated to the design and 20 marks are allocated to the discussion. So you need to make sure your discussion is quite in depth in each area. You'll have to research what are the benefits of having this equipment and this area in the classroom. Okay, very important. You have to submit it as one document. So your design and your discussion of your design must be submitted as one document. Right, let's move on to our assignment. So that is also on ECI already. As you saw, the due date is the 31st of March. So for this one, you'll have two parts. Again, remember that the parts must be submitted as one assignment. So part A, part B, one document. So part A, again, if you were in the health discussion, you're going to have a case study on a grade R learner. You will need to deal with various aspects pertaining to learner development and school readiness, and then evaluate the case study and decide whether the learner is ready to progress to grade 1. So in other words, you're going to look at the domains of development: physical, moral, social, etc. And you also, in the Young Child in Context textbook, you will see their criteria for school readiness. So it will say, physical development, the child needs to be able to balance on one leg for 5 seconds. Moral development, is the child developing a basic understanding of right and wrong? So it will give you very, very clear guidelines there. Your part B is about visual perception skills. So you're going to define visual discrimination and visual memory and the importance of each. So remember, visual discrimination is, can I see the difference in things? And then your visual memory is, do I remember what I saw? Then you're going to design an activity or a game to develop visual discrimination and visual memory. And you can include illustration. So you can draw what your game will look like. You can put in photos. You can put in pictures to give us a better understanding. Okay, let's have a look at this case study. Now, again, I would suggest you get 5 different colors of highlighters, or 6 for the language domain as well. So 1 for physical, moral, emotional, social, cognitive, and language. And as you read through the case study, you highlight where you see indications in those areas. Susie is the youngest child of 2 siblings. Her home language is Afrikaans. Susie is the youngest in her grade R class. She attends Sunville Primary School, which is an English medium school. She lives with her mother and elder sister. Susie was born 1 month premature. Susie's mother works long hours in the fire department, often having to work overtime. As a result, Susie has to go home to her grandmother in the afternoons. Her grandmother cannot speak English, so she only speaks to Susie in Afrikaans. Susie's father recently passed away with a dreaded illness earlier in the year. This has affected Susie emotionally, as she is often tearful. On arrival at school, Susie still cries when her mother says goodbye. Susie finds it difficult to grasp new concepts taught during the grade R program. Although she tries very hard, she lacks the basic concepts of number and cannot accurately count up to 20. However, she finds some mathematical concepts easy to grasp, such as one-to-one correspondence, and is able to classify and compare different manipulatives. She is unable to identify and draw the basic geometric shapes, but she is able to form a pattern using tangible items. Susie battles to concentrate, especially when she completes a task or listens to stories. Now that section in the second paragraph, can you identify the domain of development there? So this would form part of cognitive development, problem solving, mathematics concepts. And can you see there are things that she can do and things that she cannot do? So you are going to highlight both of those in order. Remember, we want to see is she ready for grade 1. That's the whole point of the assignment. So you're going to highlight the things she can do and the things she cannot do according to the criteria in your textbook. And then you'll work through the entire section and eventually come to a conclusion. Is she ready for formal schooling or not? Right, so you again are going to write an essay in response to the question based on the case study. In your introduction, you are going to define school readiness. So remember your introduction, you outline what your essay discusses further on, and then you're going to define school readiness. If you get this definition out of your textbook, you have to reference it. Paragraph 2, you're going to identify and discuss the criteria. Be careful not to plagiarize here again, the criteria for school readiness. So you're going to say, in terms of physical development, they need to be able to do the following things. And you discuss all the domains. Paragraph 3, you are going to determine school readiness for Susie. So here you can, this is the paragraph where you're going to say, what can she do in terms of emotional development and what is she finding difficulty with? And you go through all the different domains. Over there, can you see it says, remember PMS, ECL. That's the acronym we use to remember the different domains. So it's physical, moral, social, emotional, cognitive, and language. Your fourth paragraph, here you make a decision about whether Susie should progress and provide reasons. So you say whether you think she can go to grade 1 and why, or why she should remain in grade R for another year. And then finally, you'll have your conclusion paragraph, which is just the summary on everything you've discussed in your essay so far. You don't include any new points. Right, and then part B of your assignment, you create 2 activities, one for visual discrimination and one for visual memory. You're going to name the importance of each one. You're going to give your game a name and you're going to describe it. How do we play the game? How does it work? And then here you'll include that, in your instructions, and you can give an illustration of the activity. So you can include pictures. If you actually make the activity and have children play it, you can include those photographs. Just remember, don't include pictures of the children's faces. So we want 2 different games there or 2 different activities. Try to make them as creative as possible. Right, and then 5 marks are indicated for your references. So remember, once again, you have to reference in your essay in the short form, and then you include that at the reference list at the end. So when I mark it, I check that what is referenced or cited in your essay is also on your reference list. The 2 have to correspond. You can't have 20 items on your reference list and nothing in text. In your reference list, you don't include things you've just read and haven't used. It's only things that are in your actual assignment. If you use pictures, for example, for your activity, you also have to reference pictures. You can see that in the assignment, the referencing guide. It shows you how to reference pictures. And then the last 5 marks is indicated for grammar, language, and academic tone. So double check your spelling, reread your assignment. Right, Ms. Ross is active on your GRT page and she's available. She posts information in the announcements forum. You can either engage with her using the news forum there. If you want to engage with your students, she's also got a student forum where your students can respond to any questions or discuss any issues. And then just remember your submission dates, the 13th of March and the 31st of March. You have to stick to those deadlines. Any questions? In any of the other learning centers?
Lynn, hi. We've got some questions from Musgrave.
All right.
Hi there. You're speaking to Halima. So I haven't received the DeWitt textbook as yet. Apparently it's out of stock and about 300 students haven't received it. Would I be able to just use the information on ECI? Would that be sufficient, or do I have to wait for the textbooks to arrive? Thank you.
You would be able to use some of the information on ECI, and if you did research, you would probably be able to find the criteria for school readiness, because remember, that's what you'll be using your DeWitt textbook for the assignment. However, perhaps if numerous students are having a problem, we might have to consider an extension on the assignment, but Mrs. Ross will discuss this with you and she will communicate with you via ECI regarding that.
So then we have another question from Musgrave.
All right.
Okay, I'm Hasina. In terms of auditory discrimination and auditory memory, could you give me a few examples?
Remember, for your assignments, it's visual. Are you referring to visual discrimination and visual memory?
Yes.
So for visual memory, a game like, for example, Snap, where the children look at cards and they have to match their card with another card that they see, would be visual memory. Visual discrimination, children have to differentiate between what they see. So any games like Spot the Difference, you know, when you have 2 pictures and one picture shows some things have been removed or changed within the picture, that would be an example of visual discrimination.